Hi guys, hey guys, my name is Phillip Warrick and welcome to My First Deal, which ultimately led to millions. In this podcast, we explore the pivotal first deals in real estate and business that shape who you become as an investor. So whether it was the deal that inspired you the most or a challenging one that taught you hard-earned lessons, every story is unique. So we interview successful investors, business leaders, authors, and influence from around the world, bringing you real insight and real experience, whether you're just starting out or you're scaling big. On today's episode, My First Deal, which ultimately led to millions, I'm standing here with Gina Weibel. Gina has over 20 years of experience as an entrepreneur. She's actively involved in over $10 million in assets under management. She's doing some amazing things within the SubTo community, Owners Club community. And I wanted to bring Gina on to talk about her unique way that she got here from where she started to where she's at today, where last year she closed 52 houses on wraps using a very unique business model. So Gina, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Philip.
Thank you for being here. I'm so excited to have you on. And when I heard your story from you directly, we had dinner one night during the Owners Club retreat, and I was just totally intrigued with what you're doing. And so I just want to know, like, hey, start off, like, where did it start? Where did this all come from, and kind of your first deal?
I raised four kids. I was an engineer before I raised kids, but then while I was raising kids, I had a music business and a swimming business. So it worked really well with my family. But then when the kids got college age and high school age, I was ready to transition into something else. So I wanted to dip my toe in real estate. I actually looked at a few other things like getting back into engineering or doing tech of some kind. And there were jobs available, but I was going to have to climb a career ladder. And I'm not as young as I used to be. And I didn't want to have to be tied to somebody else's 10-year ladder. And I thought, let me get into real estate because then I have more control over my path and how quickly I can get where I want to go. So I joined RAIN, which is a women's real estate network, and I did a couple of PML deals. I was the PML, and those went well. So I realize in retrospect that that was very lucky because I didn't have a lot of education. I wasn't very practiced at underwriting, but the people that I worked with were really good women and they did their projects and they fulfilled their end and they paid me back. So a handful of PML deals went fine. After a couple months, I kind of wanted to expand and see what else was out there. So I joined the multifamily mindset and took their program and I partnered up with a couple of teams, two separate teams, and we did multifamily projects together. Those are still running because they're 5-year projects and they're doing great. So I feel optimistic, or I don't know, I feel good. I feel good that my two multifamily projects that I started in 2024 are smooth sailing at the moment. Things are going really well. Then I joined SubTo and Gator in January of 2024. And that opened up a whole world of other people doing other things. And I kind of thought, man, I wish I had joined this community first because every topic that's possible is being discussed. Nothing is off limits. Everything's available. So in that group, I did a few more PML deals and they went badly. So I learned quickly that just being in a group with interesting people doesn't mean you can trust everyone and doesn't mean that everyone's competent. So be very careful. Um, but while learning about what was available and what kind of projects were out there, uh, this at Squad Up Summit, I met some people who were connectors who connected me to the group that is doing the wraps that I'm doing now. And they asked me if I wanted to be a PML or a PMP. And I looked at their deal. And at first I said, you guys, it's not that interesting. I can get better returns doing multifamily. I'm just going to stick to multifamily. And they had the right response. They said, please come in here and restructure it. What would it have to look like to be interesting to you? Because if it can be if it can be something that you're interested in, then we can be successful and draw in more partners. And I said, oh, I like that opportunity. So I joined them, restructured how things were going. And I said, if you do it this way, I will partner with you. And as a matter of fact, I think I can get lots of people to partner with you. So that was July of 2024. I put the money down to acquire a house, SubTo, and
Okay.
then those partners helped find the buyer to wrap it, and it's been cash flowing ever since. Then every month after that, I helped structure and bring in more capital, and we did a house every month. We also switched at that time when I came in, July of 24 was when we started doing wraps in a different way, which gives more security than a traditional wrap. So now that we had capital and now that we had a model that gave a little more security, we were able to do one a month for a few months. And then we started doing investment clubs. And in 2025, we did 5 investment clubs, about 10 houses in each club. And that's how we did 50 in 2025.
Wow.
So each club raised about $500,000 to acquire about 10 houses that got wrapped. So now, January of 2026, we do not want to keep starting a new investment club every single 2 months period. So we are starting a fund, is our plan. We're just getting started on the fund, but now we intend to put hundreds of houses in the fund and keep going with the same model. So, uh, meeting people and connecting and listening to um, different investment opportunities, but then sitting down with the people to find out, is this investment worthwhile? And if not, what are the problems? And if you have a good operator, they will want to hear what are the deal breaking problems. And if they're a really good operator, they will say, what do you propose we change to fix it? I think that's the best response. And so we changed it, we fixed it, and then it was a good deal after that.
Love it. I love it. You hit so many things that I could go in so many different tangents with what you just talked about, right? Both for like new people coming in as well as experienced people that are, hitting a ceiling with what they can do with their own. And, I had a conversation with a gentleman yesterday and, he was talking about how much capital he has to deploy and how can he get, with how far can he get with the little bit of capital that he's got. And I said, listen, you're looking at it wrong. Every single deal that I do, just like what you just described, we raise capital for every single one. Whether I've got 500,000 in the bank or $1 million in the bank, I'm still going to raise capital for every deal that we take down, right? And it's interesting too because you mentioned so many different paths that got you to where you're at now, right? And it started with Rain, and then it went to the multifamily, and then it's SubTo, and it's Gator, and it's now Owners Club. All of these masterminds, right? And
Mhm.
people think that they have to go out there and do this business alone. You know what I mean? And so what are some of the like greatest, I guess, lessons that you learned in this short, quick 2 year journey of going through these different masterminds and trying to find your way through like, hey, what's the right path for you?
Well, I was the one who gave Pace the idea of labeling oneself as a freshman and
Oh,
labeling what you're studying as a semester. That was back
really?
in like January of 24. I honestly think I planted that idea. But I told him at that time, he said, what are you doing right now when I first met him? And I said, well, I feel like a freshman. I'm just getting started and I'm exploring all the different options to figure out where I'm going to settle. What role I'm going to settle into, what asset class I'm going to settle into, what market I'm going to settle into. And like a freshman, you can try a lot of different majors and you don't have to feel bad that you took a class in a major and then decided not to major in that. So
Oh,
don't beat yourself up if you uh, try doing a flip and then you realize, I don't really like flipping. Or don't beat yourself up if you join a certain team and then you realize, I don't like the role I was playing in that team, or I don't like the type of asset we were doing with that team. It's okay to switch. And some people have a negative connotation with that. Stop jumping all around, switching all around. I don't think you should feel bad about switching around. However, on the flip side, when you take a college class, you're stuck with it for a whole semester. You don't
Sure.
go for two classes and then drop out. You have to give it the entire semester. So if you're going to try one strategy, give it an honest try for an entire 6 months and show up every day. And if you're like me, I do have experience attending college. I have a master's degree. I spent a lot of time at school, spent way too much time at school. So that's something that makes sense to me. I'm like, okay, when I was in school and I was studying a subject, I went to that class every day for 6 months. So if I'm going to do multifamily, I can show up every day for 6 months and talk to people in that field and underwrite and work on the project and, connect with people. And then if I decide I don't want to stay in that asset, that's fine. But at least I gave it an honest try. So balance those two things. Do give something an honest try, whatever avatar you're trying out, stick with it and do it
Yeah.
every single day. But then after a few months, if you don't feel that it's your calling, skip, go do something else. And it's not a big deal. Pace also calls it trying on different hats. He says you can try on a hat, and if you don't like it, it's not a big deal to take that hat off and put a different hat on. So I know a lot of beginners are stressed out because they don't know what to do. Just pick something. That's the answer. Just pick anything and just try it for a while. If you talk to Pace, and I'm sure any of the leaders in the community, he does not like it when someone comes up and says, "What should I do?" That's way too vague. He does like it if you come up and say, "I have a goal to buy an RV park. I'm looking at X number of deals a month. I'm looking for a very specific thing that I need to help me move forward. What should I do to fill this need?" And then he's like, "Now I know how to help you. Good question." So there
Love
is
it.
such a thing as a bad question.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is.
Yeah.
It's funny because my story is a little bit opposite of yours, and I was that rebel kid, right? I barely got through high school, and and it was because I wanted to go to work, right? So I was blessed to have what they call the co-op program when I was in school, and essentially I got to use work as my electives. So the only reason I got through 11th and 12th grade is because I was in that program. I just had to go to school in the morning. I was out of school by 11 and I went to work, right? And I started my entrepreneur journey very early on. But I tell a lot of people coming into the community, hey, it's overwhelming. There's so much information to learn. But if you go and break it up into the semesters, go into the vault and do those courses, because it's a curriculum on a specific topic. It's not bouncing you everywhere, right? And doing it that way will really give you the skills, right? And also the understanding of a lot of different methods. And whether you call it shiny object syndrome or putting on different hats and trying on different hats, I think it's important for people to go through those semesters so they can learn what fits for them. And then also knowing too, like, hey, what type of deals fits, because the exit strategy depends on the deal itself, right? And so I'm always looking for like what is like a good system that I can replicate and just kind of keep repeating and repeating and repeating. And until you land on the one that resonates with you, I suggest keep going through the semesters and learning as much as possible. And it's crazy because now I'm a nerd. Like back in high school, I wanted to quit. I quit college twice, and because I wanted to work and be an entrepreneur. But now I'm like, I'm in the vault every single day when I'm doing my cardio,
Oh,
I'm listening to
welcome
stuff.
to the nerd club.
So it's crazy, but great advice. Just kind of doing the thing, learning the thing, and if it doesn't fit, hey, go to the next one, right? So pretty cool. So now today you're like doing some really amazing things, raising capital, doing 52 deals in a year, and I'm sure you're probably pacing to do more this year than that. But I want you to talk a little bit about this unique strategy and kind of more or less why you chose wraps and SubTo combined with wraps and that whole thing, and how it helps both sellers that y'all are helping, right, by buying their house, and then also the buyers that you're putting in these homes.
So let me touch on one thing real quick, which
Go
is
ahead.
I have a whole team. So
Love it.
there's three main partners, but then we have about five other people who are also sharing GP shares. And then each of them has a team of people working with them. So we have like a group of close to 20 people working together. And some of those are VAs and some of those are part-time. But it takes a lot of us to get to where we are. We buy one property and we wrap one property a week. So that's not me doing that. That's a whole team doing that. So just to be clear, I'm really
Yeah.
impressed if someone's out there doing that kind of volume with just a one person show or two or three people. Um, your question was, remind me the question.
All over the
Oh,
place.
tell you about the structure. Let me tell you about the
Yeah.
structure. Okay. First of all, we buy most of our properties right now from wholesalers.
Okay.
Eventually, someday, we may expand into doing direct to seller or direct to agent, but that itself is a whole nother business. The ability to have a team that's calling leads and getting things under contract is an entirely different operation. So
It's
we
a whole
haven't
nother
done
business.
that yet. Right now, we just buy from wholesalers. I'm very glad that they're out there doing their part, and we are happy to buy from them. So, yes, we are buying properties that were pre foreclosure for people who have a low interest rate, generally, a low PITI, and they have arrears on their mortgage. And usually they've been on the market for a while and nobody's buying those homes. And we come in and we say, we will buy it at your asking price and pay off your arrears and save you from foreclosure. And you get to walk away with a fresh start. So those people I don't interact much with because the wholesaler has done that part. But by and large, they get a clean slate to move on with. Sometimes they walk away with money, and sometimes it's not a lot of money, the seller, but they have a fresh start. Um, then in a wrap, normally we would keep paying that underlying mortgage. And in a traditional wrap, you give the deed to a new buyer and you set up a mortgage with that buyer. The biggest problem with a wrap is what are you going to do if that buyer defaults on that mortgage to you? You have to foreclose to try to get your deed back. And when you foreclose, it could trigger due on sale from the underlying mortgage. And it could take a long time and it could be a little expensive. And it is going to ding that guy's credit score because he's going to get foreclosed on.
Mhm.
So we want to make it a little safer for ourselves and our investors. So instead of giving a mortgage, we have a different structure. We put the deed into an LLC. Let's call it 123 Main Street or whatever the address of the house is. And then it's a business. And then we sell shares of the business to the end buyer. So he's a business partner with us. He gets to live in the house and remodel it and own it and take care of it and do all the things, but he's also a business partner with us. So in our operating agreement, it shows how many shares he has. And then in the agreement, it specifies who has each role. One of his roles is to submit each month funds to cover taxes and insurance and funds to buy more shares. So he has a set amount that he pays every month, which purchases more shares in the business. And after 30 years, when he owns the entire business, he can take us off the operating agreement and then he can move the deed if he wants and whatever else. The business only does one thing, which is manages a property. That's the role of the business, is to take care of this property. Um, so what if he doesn't make his payments? We have an agreement with him. We talk it out and we give him a few months to remedy it. But if he doesn't remedy it, we eject him from the property and then we can resell his shares to someone else. So to him, it will feel exactly the same as a foreclosure. I got kicked out of the property and I lost all my equity. So don't do that. But it won't affect his credit. He won't have any bad credit scores because this being a business partner doesn't improve or damage your credit. And for us, it makes it quick and straightforward to take over the property if we need to. And in the past year, this past year was a lot of experimenting and trying and learning and finding out where we can push our limits on different things. And we did have a couple of people that we ejected and resold their homes. And what we saw was if you have a few months where they don't pay, and then you have a few months where you have to market again, and you probably have to repaint the house on the interior and clean it. Then when you finally get a new person to take over the position, their initial purchase of shares or down payment, if you want to call it, refills the war chest and it smooths out the money lost during those months. because we keep paying the underlying mortgage. We never stop. So our goal is to keep the underlying bank happy at all times. And this system has allowed us to smooth over those bumps. That's the biggest concern with a wrap is if your buyer defaults.
Love it.
Our goal is to find buyers that aren't going to default. So,
Right. But you got to be prepared for that, the worst case
right.
scenario. And so you're setting up an LLC for every single deal that you purchase,
Mhm.
right? And then you mentioned a war chest, which a lot of people may or may not know what that is, but that's really like funding the bank account to operate that little business, right? To operate that house, to cover for vacancies and non-payments and
Right.
fix-ups and repairs and things that come up. Uh,
Absolutely. In our model, we plan
yeah.
that at any given time, it will take, when we buy houses, our average days on market is about 80,
Mhm.
maybe a little less. So we plan that we're going to need to cover the underlying mortgage for at least that long. And then we have a bell curve of how long it's going to take. So we keep enough money to cover the few houses that are going to take 6 months to sell. Usually we experimented with a couple of one bathroom homes. Those take a really long time to sell. So we're not going to get too much into those anymore. Nobody wants a one bathroom home. So we keep enough funds to cover however long it's going to take to sell a house because we know sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it's really quick.
Yeah.
And then we prepare that in any given month, 10% of people might miss their payment. They might make it up the next month, but that's just our current buffer. Let's be
Right.
prepared that 10% of people are just going to miss their payment. What are we going to do? We still have to pay the underlying mortgage. So we keep that money on hand, ready to be prepared for that at all times. So,
Got it. So do you keep that at the LLC level? Like each one has its own bank account and kind of running it that way? Because this sounds like 52 LLCs and 52 books and tax
well,
returns to me. I'm thinking
in
not right.
the taxes are a fun time for our accountant, but in the past year, we had holding companies, which were investment clubs, and the investors who came in were active partners. And the holding company owns 10 houses.
Okay.
So the bank account for the holding company can cover all of those houses. So
Okay.
actually, we can perform much better that way than having one individual house. Because if you have only one house and only one bank account and only one investor, you have to be prepared for if that house misses a payment
Okay.
or something. But when you have 10 houses, it's okay to reduce your war chest a bit because
Yeah.
the probability that all 10 are going to miss at the same time is probably not going to happen. But that's why we've been gathering data, we've been looking at our numbers, and we've figured out how much do we need to keep. So now as we move into the fund, instead of having 10 houses in a group, it's going to be all of our houses, hundreds of houses, and we can get more done by spreading the risk out, if that makes sense. So it makes it
100%.
easier. Having a fund is the correct way to slosh funds between house to house to house because they're all owned by the fund. One of the problems that I've run into in the community is people who don't have a fund, but who have several projects going on. Maybe they have 15 flips going at the same time. Maybe they have 15 that they're trying to wrap at the same time, and they don't have a fund but they want to move money from one project to another project so that everything kind of balances each other out. And you can't do that. That's not okay. But watch out for that because there are people trying to do that and that's not okay. That's so the investors on whichever project the money got distributed to a different project, they're not happy.
Right.
Anyway, this
The
is
right
why
way
funds
at the
exist.
fund, exactly at the fund level,
At the
your
fund
war
level, this
chest
is
is up there
exactly
in
it.
the
Yes.
fund, so it can cover all the assets within that fund. That's
Correct. And the ones that are cash flowing, they don't need any money thrown at them this month, but the ones over here that missed their payment, we use money from the fund level to cover that. That's why funds exist. So, um, I just thought I would throw that out there. Be careful when you are invited to participate with someone who's doing a whole bunch of whatever. if they don't have a fund, I give them a stank eye and I'm like, I'm a little worried that you might get tempted to move money around between your projects because you have so many going on. So
Right.
I like it when people just start a fund and do it the right way.
That's a great caution and great advice. And I'm actually in the process of setting up my fund like you. I've got the PPM in my email to finalize and execute and get this thing rolling. And I went with a company named Avestor, and great company, and they do things a little bit different. It's like they call it a customizable fund, so it's one fund here at the top, but then you can put deals within the deal level underneath the fund. So it's almost like a little syndications within one fund, which is
Yeah.
really, really interesting. Something definitely you or other people would possibly want to explore. But before we do that, or even if we don't, I wanted to go back because at the fund level, but then you still have individual LLCs for each house,
Yes,
even at the
because
fund level. Okay.
each LLC is slowly getting sold off to Joe the buyer.
Right.
So Joe the buyer only affects that one house and that one little LLC. He doesn't affect any of the other LLCs. So yes, we have a structure for each property, and each property, the percentage ownership is slowly transitioning year by year.
Love it. And you mentioned buying from wholesalers, which is a very important point, right? Because I tell people all the time, hey, if you're a buyer and you're already at the raising capital level and you're doing your own fund, the wholesaling, that's a whole nother business, right? It makes sense to buy from buyers. We don't want to be going out and making 100 offers, right? To get to 10 accepted offers, to get to maybe one or two of those that actually
Right.
close. Why not go directly to the wholesalers and add value to them and let them bring the deals? I love how you're doing that. What's some
We're
advice?
we're thinking of the idea of doing a little bit more direct to agent ourselves, but
Okay.
the thing is, when as a wholesaler, when you confront you talk to lots of sellers and agents, and many times the deals that you get under contract are more appropriate for a certain strategy or whatnot. So any given wholesaler is not going out looking for deals that match my strategy. They're just going out looking for deals that they can get under contract and how they can help the seller. And that's the correct attitude. Help the seller and give the seller whatever strategy they need to be successful. Now, if it happens to be a SubTo and it happens to be the size and number that fits me, then call me. But 9 of the other 10 properties that you got under contract don't fit that. So call the other buyers that do fit that need. So one thing about wholesaling right now is if I went out and started wholesaling, I'd probably get a bunch of deals under contract, but they wouldn't fit this model. So I would end up assigning them to someone else anyway. So
Yeah.
it is a completely separate business or separate branch of the business. But guess what? We did start a servicing company after doing a year with 50 wraps and frustration with all of our servicing companies. So if anybody needs a servicing company for their sub-twos, they can reach out to me. It's called Ultra Servicing, and my partner is the one who I'm not very involved in that, but I'm
Okay.
happy to give it a plug.
That's great. That's exciting. And that's cool with the business too. And especially at the fund level, you realize that there are a lot of different little verticals within one business model that can spit off different needs, right? The servicing company being one. I don't know. I guess you probably avoid having to use an RMLO and all of these kind of things too when you're working with
Because
you.
we don't have a loan is the main reason we avoid an RMLO. There's no
Right.
loan. So we do still interview our applicants because we want them to be successful.
Right.
Um, but technically, we never issue a mortgage to anyone.
Yeah, so you're still pre-qualifying them. You don't want to set them up to fail, make sure that they can afford the house, right? But not necessarily going through all the lending. So
And if they fail, that's more work for us to try to stabilize it again. So we don't really want them to fail.
right,
If they fail and we resell their shares, we can get back on track, and the down payment from a new person would kind of cover all the costs that we had lost. But what about all that work? Like,
right,
it would just be better to just keep moving smooth.
right. So on that part where they fail, and the few that you had fail, recently, and you talk about exit, getting in, removing them from the LLC, obviously removing them from the property. What's that process look like? Are they kicking and screaming? Do you have to do, eviction court, like, because they're living in the house, right? So,
The few that we've had were not unrealistic. Like they knew that they hadn't been paying and they knew that they were going to get evicted.
okay,
And sometimes we do have to call the sheriff and he knocks on the door. He's like, you guys have to leave. And they're like, okay.
okay,
Like they were not unaware that they hadn't been paying. So,
okay,
so far, that's how it's been. We did buy a house from another SubTo student who was trying to wrap it and it didn't go well. And I don't know, I think the paperwork wasn't done right. The buyers ended up living in the house. They never paid a down payment. They never pay any monthly payment. They're not helping pay the underlying mortgage. And this person was frustrated because they're like, I can't get money out of them and I can't get them out of the house. Everything's a disaster. And unfortunately, the buyer is kind of a professional squatters.
oh no,
So we bought that house from them and we've been fighting the legal battle to try to get those guys out, but they really are professional squatters. Like they go through legal loopholes to extend everything so that it never can quite get to court, to never quite get a judgment, to never quite get them out. And they've been living in the house for over a year and never have paid any money to anyone. So
wow.
I don't want to put this out there, but apparently you can make a pretty good living being a professional squatter.
Hey, but maybe that's what, 1 out of 50 or 1 out of 100, whatever the case is, right? And don't let one
Well,
thing
yes.
happen.
And
Spoil
we
the
took it over to help somebody else who was completely overwhelmed trying to deal with them.
right.
So that's the
Yeah.
only time we've come across professional squatters, but we're working on it. We're not giving up.
Yeah, and that's the importance, right, of having that war chest and the vetting in the front end, making sure that you're putting somebody in there that's legit, So
Right. And I didn't put those people in there, but yeah, that's the only hard story we've had. When that story's complete, I will come share the whole tale.
yes, that'd be great. Well, talk to me about taxes. Like, so the fund bought it or the LLC. Usually, when we purchase a property sub two, we get all the benefits of owning a rental property, right? And all the tax advantages of owning rental properties. But when we sell something on a wrap or seller financing, then you pretty much lose all of those benefits, right? Because now the homeowner living there owns that asset. So how is the on a high level, like what's the tax benefits
Well,
or consequences for doing this model?
it's similar to owning the rental, but instead of 100% of the value, you only own 90% of the value, and your business partner has 10% of the value. Your business partner is the person living in the house.
Right.
So on our statements each year, we can take depreciation, for example, straight line depreciation on 90%. And then the next year, it's more like 85% or something, some number. It goes down slowly at the beginning. So we still get most of the advantages of ownership, which is nice. In a wrap, you would lose all that.
Right.
But in this model, you still have that. Also, let's say in 5 to 8 years, if he wants to move out of the house and we have a discussion, do we want to buy his shares back or do we want to just sell it on the open market? Those are probably the two choices. So maybe we sell it on the open market and the house has appreciated. If we still own 50% of the equity and he owns 50% of the equity, we both get to enjoy the results of the appreciation.
Okay. Could you, let's say 5 years down the road, if y'all chose to, could y'all refinance the property and
Yeah,
get out
we
of that?
can refinance our underlying mortgage if the rate is looking good at any time for
Really?
the amount we owe. It wouldn't even affect our partner. We can
Right.
just go on our own and refinance our deal with the bank. So if
Okay.
most of our loans are below 4%, but if we do have a few that are in the fives. So if something gets low enough, we will refinance those high ones.
Yeah. And I was thinking too for the investor, the initial upfront capital, right? Because each one of these deals is probably and explaining this to wholesalers is very important, right? The entry fee is not the amount of capital needed to take that deal down, right? There
That's
might be a $20,000 entry fee, but we need to build that reserve. We need to do some renovations. We need to have 3 to 4 months worth of holding
what we
costs
have.
until we get income coming in, right? And so I would think the average is probably 50 to 70,000 per deal,
That's
so
very accurate. Yes.
yeah. So in that question, it was like, okay, well, what if we want to pull that capital back in 5 years if the property's appreciated or there's room to do that? Not so much concerned about the interest rate that's there. Obviously, we don't want to refi out of a great interest rate if it doesn't make sense, right? But that would be one of my thoughts. Like, hey, let's if we can get some of that capital back and redeploy it into a new deal at some point, then we can go further with the capital that's been raised.
We're
Is that
keeping our eye on it, but we haven't done anything with that yet. So that's something for future brainstorming. But you're right. There is growing equity in the properties. So
right? Yeah. So, and technically, that's to the buyer's benefit, right? Because they've got a fixed price, essentially.
to their benefit,
As far as the value going up, right? Because they're
yeah,
really buying the house, right, at the price they bought it at
yeah,
today. And yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
We have our contract is a set amount, and then even though it is not a mortgage, there is a set monthly payment for 30 years. Some people have chosen 40 years.
really, okay,
Nobody has chosen 50 years, but have you seen that some banks are offering 50-year mortgages nowadays?
yes, I saw that.
So I haven't had any takers on that, but some people really want a lower monthly payment. And we say, okay, are you willing to make it a 40-year plan? And they say, okay.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, if that's all they can afford, I think that's better than paying rent. I mean, you think about
Right.
rent. Rent is literally 100% interest. And
Yeah.
you get no benefit at all as a renter, right? So this is giving people a
And
chance to benefit from home ownership.
I have amazing testimonials. So at some point, I need to find a better way to make sure everybody sees our amazing testimonial videos. The buyers are very grateful because they're often in a situation where they don't see how they're going to qualify for a bank loan. So it doesn't matter what mortgage rates are, it doesn't matter how many houses are available. They can't qualify for any of that. So seller finance through our method is the first opportunity they've had to actually get a house for their family. So people are very grateful. We
I
have
love
just
it.
beautiful stories. I one of the testimonials, I'll share it with you later, but there's a mom who in part of her divorce proceedings, in order to get custody of the kids, she had to have ownership of a home. And I don't know why that was written that way, but her credit had been wrecked with her ex. So in my mind, I'm like, did they put that in there just as like, I know you'll never be able to overcome this, ha ha ha. I don't know. But she was able to buy a house through our program and get custody of her kids, and the lives of those kids dramatically improved and changed and stabilized. And she's so happy that they're just having a peaceful, you know, steady home life now. So
I love that. That's such a great story, and it's so important for people to know, right? Because from the outside looking in, a lot of people think real estate investors, they're just in it for the money. And hey, our conversations revolve around returns and money and capital and all of these things, which is great. But what's the mission? What's the purpose? What's the philanthropy part behind what you're doing, right? And when we focus on that, the people that we're helping sell their house and avoid foreclosure, the people that we're giving that chance to own a home where they otherwise couldn't, and the capital partners that we're bringing into deals, because I know if you're like me, you're working with like high net worth individuals that have a great job or great income, or they're self-employed and they have their own businesses that make a lot of money, but they want to be involved in real estate, but they don't have time to do all of that, right? So we get to bring value to them by offering these opportunities for them to partner with us while we do, all of the active work so they can just put their capital to work. And so there's so many benefits to everybody that's involved. And it's important for people to understand that in my book.
you hit that spot on. And I've told a few people who want to get into real estate and they have a really high paying job. And I did not have a very high paying W 2 job at any point in my life, mostly because I was an entrepreneur. But my W 2 jobs have always been okay, nothing special. But I thought if I had a high paying W 2 job and if I liked it, and if I wanted to get into real estate, I would love to be a passive investor and let someone else do the actual work. Why give up the thing that you love that's already making you money? You don't have to go learn everything. So I have several friends who are like, I'm trying to quit my W 2. And I say, hold on, hold on. if you're quitting W-2 so that you can be an active investor and manage an RV park, I'm like, you do realize you're just getting another job. You're giving yourself a different job. And although you're the boss, it's still going to be a job. So how about instead just invest passively with someone who's doing it and you can get the tax benefits and you can own the real estate, but you don't have to run it. So be careful. If you've got an amazing job, don't walk away too fast, friends.
Yeah, exactly. This has been great, Gina. And I want to ask you, right? Like in this community, we're all about giving and helping and adding value to each other. And you have a very unique strategy, right? And I can guess what you need, right? Being other capital investors, like people that we're talking about now that want to put their capital to work. Also deals, right? We're always looking for deals and capital in, just wanted to kind of let you I guess give your little commercial and where people can find you and what you're, how they can reach out to you and that kind of stuff so that they can help add value to you and bring you what you need.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
true. We're always looking for different partners for different projects. And um, one of the things that I tell people when you're evaluating who you're investing with is find out how many open projects they have, but also find out how many successful projects they've done. Um, so with our group, we've done about 60 total of
Okay.
these wraps. And so there's a team who's worked out a system for getting it done. And the proof is there that we can follow through. And then we do have a dozen that are maybe for sale at any given time. When you go to decide who to invest with, keep that in mind. Like,
Yeah.
or invest with somebody who can show that they're actually getting the thing done. And if they have a bunch of projects open, do they have a fund or a structure that allows them to move money around? Be careful about that. You can reach out to me at Gina, Gina, at easydwell.com, EASYDWELL.com. That's my work address. And my personal address is this is Gina, yes, at gmail.com.
I
This is
love
Gina, yes. Get it?
love it. Yes.
This is
That's like
genius. Um,
genius.
and we're always looking for wholesalers who have deals. We like to buy 3-bedroom, 2-bath SubTos in Florida. If it can cash flow as a long-term rental, we can probably use it. The number one killer is deals that uh, are upside down and they can't cash flow as a long-term rental. I probably can't use it. But acquisitions at easydwell.com is the best place to send deals to. And I'd love to buy some more deals.
Love it. Well, listen, we're gonna have to run this play here in Houston too, right? So let's talk about that the next time we talk. And as we're both kind of setting up our funds, like you're getting things finalized, I'm sure, and I'm getting things finalized. And part of my fund, one of the deals that I'm gonna do will be allocation, right? Kind of the fund of funds model. So maybe I can help and bring capital to you as well through our fund structure as we kind of keep rolling. But listen, if you and the team want to talk about, running that same playbook, I believe here in Houston, that would be a great in San Antonio as well. There's so many opportunities here in Houston and San Antonio that we could probably do something like that together.
Step
So
one will be to hire a really great lawyer. So
yes,
that's making sure everything is up to par for the local laws and all
well,
the contracts match the local laws. That's step one.
the
And
local,
then
yeah,
and then you can hit the ground running and copy everything else in the structure. But
there you go. That's awesome.
yeah.
Well, Gina, thanks for being on the show. And I just wanted to kind of do a quick little outro and I'll obviously invite you back, right? So let's talk about that next when we're going to be able to come back and see you again and kind of get an update on where you're at in the next few months. And I think that would be exciting. And then you can have that testimonial page ready to go so people can see these buyers' testimonials. How's that sound?
Yes, I have those videos. I just don't have them on a website, but I'm going to start sharing those videos. They are so inspiring.
Before we end, my last question, and this question gets asked all the time. What would you tell yourself before you got started? And you mentioned one thing too, and I don't want it to be that because you mentioned I wish I would have found the SubTo community sooner. Don't make that the one thing, right? Because
That
that's
won't be the one
like
thing. It's
that's
okay.
huge, right? But what is something that you would tell yourself if you were kind of like starting over?
Oh, that's so tough. Um, I really wish I could undo the bad deals that I loaned money and lost it. So if you are putting money into a deal, don't feel pressure to get it done fast. Don't feel rushed. Don't feel that you're going to miss the boat. There's always another deal around the corner. This isn't the only time this type of deal is going to be presented. And don't be too shy to ask other people to look at your deal and say to them, I'm kind of new. Do you see any red flags? Just tell me if you see any red flags before I send my money. And if you ask enough people, one of them is going to say, whoa, there's a huge red flag here. Don't do this. So, one of the deals I lent on, I feel pretty embarrassed, but I'll tell you so that you don't have to have the same experience, is I loaned based on the ARV instead of the current value. Don't do that. So I loaned money based on the after repair value. Um, as soon as the person got the money, they just ran off with it and disappeared. And now I can foreclose if I want, but the house is worthless. And that person took all of the loan amount, which was the purchase and repair amount complete. And I'm like, now I'm left with a worthless house. That doesn't do me any good. So
Great lessons. Don't
pretty
get my
embarrassed that I did that. But now that you've heard it, can you guys please not do that?
Yes, that's a great point. And I think you learn a lot. You learn more from the mistakes. Obviously, you learn from doing, right? We can go to all the trainings and courses and seminars and live events and all of these things, but until you actually start taking action, you're not going to learn. And the best lessons are learned from the mistakes, right? Even though we've been through all these semesters and all this training, and you're still going to learn more by doing it, taking action, and learning from those mistakes.
The most wise people can learn from others' mistakes.
That's a shortcut. That's
and
the cheat
save
code.
themselves the pain.
That's the
That's what
cheat
I
code.
wish I could go back and save myself from some pain.
Yes. Well, this nerd's a slow learner, so I'll do both, right? I'll learn from other people's mistakes. Then I go make the same mistake, and then it finally sinks in. So, but listen, guys, it's been great. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Again, Gina. And, if you got value from today's episode for our listeners, make sure that you like, subscribe, and follow the podcast so that you never miss a powerful story like this one that Gina brought to us today. And if this episode helped you, please share it with somebody that needs to hear it, because the right deal or the right lesson can change everything for other people. And we're all about helping others. And that's why we are here. So thanks for tuning in to My First Deal, which ultimately led to millions. And we'll see you on the next episode.